Hello there, my name is Mike, and welcome back to another Soulframe video. Digital Extremes just got done hosting the Soulframe DevStream number 12, and I'm here to offer a quick recap of what was covered in that stream, as well as offer some of my own feedback for some of the upcoming changes in Prelude 13 and later. On the screen, you'll see the timestamps for the DevStream itself. I'll link that down below in the description. That way, if you want to hear them describe something in their own words, you can go jump straight to it without having to watch the whole hour-and-a-half stream. Starting off, they're bringing something back called Envoy Hour. This is just a stream by Jeff Crooks, the creative director, to interact with the community and show off some of the cool stuff that they're doing with Soulframe. But let's get straight into the meat of what Prelude 13 is going to be, and that's the Virtues rework. The way the system works currently is that each pact has its own pre-assigned virtues, as well as some virtues that you can assign yourself to whatever virtue you're looking to power up for whatever build or playstyle you're going after. You can also add more virtues by equipping a different medallion or necklace, or by increasing your mastery level by leveling up pacts and weapons. The way the new system works, though, is that you will have virtue prisms that you equip like a piece of armor in the same spot that you would have used to allocate your points with the plus and minus keys. These prisms have a preset ratio of courage, spirit, and grace, and those will be allocated based on whatever that ratio is for that selected prism as you level up. Along with the prisms, they're adding attunement to all of your armor as well. So you'll need to hit whatever threshold the armor requires in a certain virtue to get full effectiveness out of that armor. From the footage that they showed, it also looks like you can get different virtues on a single piece of gear, so it will scale from multiple virtues rather than just the virtue required to equip the piece of gear and get its full effectiveness out of it. Besides impacting your gear a little bit differently now, it also changes what the virtues themselves actually do. In the current iteration of the game, courage, generally speaking, will increase the power of your abilities, increase the damage that they do, where spirit will increase the duration of those abilities, and grace will increase the range of those abilities. I say generally because the virtues don't actually impact all abilities the same way. You have to go somewhere like advocate.org and look at their breakdown of the abilities to actually see what virtues are affecting what. There are certain abilities that cannot be impacted by certain virtues to increase their strength, range, or durations. To add to the muddiness of the situation, they weren't super clear in the stream of actually what the new virtues do. They described courage as the warrior virtue, so it'll increase your armor and your melee weapon damage. And I don't know if that actually means just your melee weapon or if it'll impact all weapons, because currently in game, especially when talking about Tethrin, when it says melee, it actually applies to every weapon that you use. And it doesn't get better from there. So for Spirit, they basically describe this as a mage or cleric class, and you'll be able to cast your abilities more frequently. And that's pretty much the entirety of the description. You'll be soft, squishy, your weapons won't be very effective, and you'll be able to cast your abilities a whole bunch. Lastly, they described Grace as being sneaky and stabby, and I assume that means that you're just going to get bonus damage to finishers and stealth attacks and things of that nature. They didn't really give a very good description of what this will actually do for your gameplay, beyond maybe just boosting your damage when performing these special actions. The new virtues will also impact your abilities differently. Instead of being mixed up together and impacting different parts of an ability, each of the virtues will now affect only their color-coordinated ability, so one being your courage will be affected by only your courage virtue, instead of mixing together grace or spirit for range and duration of the ability where it applies. Lastly, before I get on to some of my feedback for this new system, they mentioned that the new prisms are not just automatically unlocked, that you will get them from possibly drops. You'll also get one from each of the wild packs that you have if you've purchased them, as well as a prism for your starter pact. And before you listen to what I'm about to say, just remember that they asked for it.
Blast us with feedback after this ships.
Which we want.
Which we want.
Yep.
The first thing that really worries me about this system is the acquisition of the prisms. The way they talk, they want them to come from gameplay elements, so bosses or factions or something of that nature. They want you to have to go earn them or grind them in the game itself. The game is already set up to where your starter, pact, and weapon are the only thing that you have for a very large portion of the early game. you have to do multiple heavy-hitting quests and rank up your faction just to change your Pact or your weapon. I really dislike the idea of having to go farm up a Prism in a playstyle that maybe I don't enjoy, just to be able to try out a different playstyle. There's no way that I can get a different playstyle with my Pact and Prism right off the bat, the way that you can by reassigning the virtues in the current system. And what happens when I grind a weapon and spend the time getting the materials and resources to craft it, and then wait for 24 hours for that weapon to craft, only to find out that I don't have a Prism that causes that weapon to be effective? I already know one person in my personal life who quit the game outright because they picked a Pact that they didn't like and a weapon that they didn't like right at the start of the game, and it was going to be 3 to 5 hours of gameplay just to change that and to try something different, not to mention having to wait for those items to craft. Beyond the acquisition of the Prisms, I really feel like the way that they impact your abilities is going to be a net negative. I really like the concept of the different virtues affecting different aspects of your abilities, so that you could go for max power or maxed range, or a mixture of maxed range and duration, so that your abilities could really be fine-tuned to whatever content you were doing at that moment. Even if that system wasn't very well applied in the current iteration of the game, I think that it could have been fine-tuned to really give a lot of control to players to be able to customize their abilities and really get what they want out of each of them. With the new virtues and the way they interact with the abilities, it just kind of feels like the abilities are dumbed down and their ratios are all predefined, so you're never going to get anything special out of an ability. It's just going to be slightly better for each virtue point that you stack into it, in a very predefined and already structured kind of way. My last nitpick for the virtues rework is going to have to be about how everything is going to interact with each other and the way that the new virtues work. They mentioned that stacking different virtues will change the way your Pact plays, so stacking more courage will increase your weapon and armor, while grace will reduce both of those but increase your ability damage. But also your virtues will only affect the abilities of the same color as that virtue. So what happens if I want to make a super tanky Tethrin with my number 2 ability that already increases your armor and slightly increases your damage? That number 2 ability will increase with power with your Spirit ability. Spirit negatively affects your armor and weapon damage. So will that cancel out the effect of the ability itself by stacking Spirit just to be able to make that ability more powerful? Without going on and on and on about the different abilities, this system really looks like it's going to suffer and going to need a lot of fine-tuning and balancing with each individual ability, and we'll probably end up having to see all of the abilities reworked in some way just to be able to interact with this new Prism system and the new virtues in a way that isn't negative overall. Digital Extremes aren't dummies, so I'm sure that they've spotted some of the stuff that I'm pointing out here, and they've already got fixes in the pipeline or have already fixed it before the patch even comes out. It's going to have to be one of those things we actually get our hands on and play around with and see where the shortcomings are and where the strengths are, and offer some in-depth feedback so that they're able to get the system in a place where it feels fluid and fun and a benefit to the game. With that absolute monster of a section out of the way, we can probably blast through most of the rest of the stream pretty quickly. Next up is the combat update, and this isn't all the combat changes that I was really hoping to see, with all the feedback that I left and that I saw a lot of people leaving about how the melee system needs to be fixed. Their biggest changes were based around the general feel of combat, so characters are less floaty and slippery, they turn faster when you're targeting different enemies, and the camera won't be quite so tightly connected to the player, so that you get a little bit more of a cinematic experience when you're fighting, and so the camera feels a little bit more dynamic to zoom in and out when you're fighting different groups of enemies or single enemies. They also dialed back the number of heavy attacks that you'll see coming out. They acknowledged that enemies were throwing out way too many heavies, and it was leading to a lot of dodge gameplay and just dodge and poke and dodge and poke.
Kind of feels like 30% or maybe even 50% of the attacks that enemies are kicking out right now on live are unblockable, which means you're constantly in this kind of dodge spam situation because you can't really trust the blocking system.
60%.
Sure, 60%.
You could see that in
Yep.
the one of the
Yep.
in the I think it was the Wolder before one
Yep.
where I had to enemy attacking me and I was like defending, and
Yep.
it's like he just got through.
You can't.
And it's like,
You
what
got
happened?
through. Yeah.
You hear there that they also acknowledged enemies hitting through blocks and the block and parry system being highly inconsistent, so they know that this is a major problem, and the most that they did to address this were the following clips.
There's also issues on live right now where if you're feathering a block to try to get a parry, it would be reacquiring different targets as well. So now the system is much more stable and reliable for you to really duel with someone. Delays inside the input system, the delays inside the animation system have been really
It's
optimized.
like removing some of the frustration.
Removing the frustration.
This is going to have to be another one of those systems that we actually get our hands on and play with to see if it really makes a meaningful change in the gameplay itself. They didn't address it quite as directly as I had hoped that they would, so I'm hoping that the fixes that they're describing there are actually the fixes that I'm looking for the block and parry system to be way more consistent. They also commented on the stagger and knockdown mechanic a little bit later in the stream.
There are
sound
changes.
rage,
There are
please,
changes in
Whispers.
the stability system.
Yeah, there's been tweaks. With the virtue changes, there's like a base stability that all players will get, and then there's been a lot of like Joe's really been working, getting the thresholds in which you stumble and stagger in a better spot. Same with the enemies. So there's been a lot of all the other combat. There's been some really great improvements to that.
Yeah, you're not getting this kind of like knockdown party as much anymore.
Obviously, all the melee changes that they're talking about are going to be good and a huge benefit to the game. But I did notice at a couple of points in the gameplay going on behind the stream that they're still suffering from the same range issues and target acquisition issues that we've been complaining about for a while, where melee attacks just seem to whiff enemies even if they're right up on top of them.
Kind of bots, right?
Totally, yeah.
No, I'm serious.
Someone said,
I am
as an
serious.
Prelude's player, I support this
I
already.
am very
and I think
sentimental about this stuff.
That's very sweet.
Exactly, a Prelude Festival. Perfect. There we go.
Shatter asked, will you ever...
Along with the combat changes, they're actually adding 3 new weapons to the game. The first one being a primary magic weapon called the Seathorn. The second one is going to be a magic secondary weapon called the Masker's Rest. This looks like a lot of fire, so I'm probably going to enjoy that quite a bit. And then the last one is going to be a melee weapon. This one's a secondary dual short sword called the Clivers, and I'm really looking forward to these because we'll finally be able to run a bow as well as dual short swords. They're also reworking how you do your Sparrow's Tales, or world quests, whatever you want to call them. You'll be able to access them and accept them from any of the world trees, and the world trees will also show you what other events are going on inside of whatever zone that world tree is in. So it'll show up for the Collector and the Avocat Merchant, as well as the new event that they're teasing a little bit later. As for just new content and not reworks and such, we're getting a new boss called the Vadagar Bear, which is going to be the same boss fight that you do for the Waste Bear quest, just out in the open world, kind of the same way that they did with the Vadagar Stag. We'll also be getting a new activity called Operation the Organ. It looks like you do it kind of like you do a siege, where it's different steps to unlock the area and go up and destroy things or fight enemies. They didn't really go in depth on if it's going to behave like the Collector, where it spawns in different areas and you have to go find it to complete, or if it's going to behave more like a siege, where it's in a fixed location and you can go complete it on a timer. To round off their stream, they teased some concept arts and some models that they're working on to come in later in the year and in future Prelude patches. They've got a new Pact in the works, and they've got some new armors to go with it, as well as a new Omen Beast quest, which features a goat. And the last of the concept art were some location arts that are really, really cool, and I can't wait to explore them. And that's about it for the DevStream summary. I think I covered all the big stuff in the video, and I'm going to pop the timestamps for the DevStream back up on the screen. If you want to take a look over that and see if there's anything that I missed that you're interested in, you can go check out what they have to say about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.